Watch that. You need to watch that site. I learn a lot on there. And she makes porn at meetthemayhems.com. Say hi to Miss Maggie Mayhem.
Oh, San Francisco, 7 miles by 7 miles, someone gets up and tells a story about going to the Armory to make a film called Indiatro and getting painted in gold, and all about, another of the gold candelabras getting hog-tied and suspended above a coffee table where people were having sex, and you were that girl in the hog-tie! That movie is totally available for streaming on kink.com, kinkondemand.com. So don't worry, you're on the internet. I'm so happy that I could tell you about that on stage. So I'm so excited to tell a story, but I just kind of wanted to briefly talk a little bit about Prop 35 because the theme tonight is who you calling a dirty whore. And, it is a really great thing that called out to me. But it really is kind of bad timing because last night was the election night, and it was a really kind of tense election. And I know I was definitely glued to my YouTube stream, waiting to see who was going to be our president, what our House, what our Congress was going to look like, and a lot of these big propositions. And I think we held a lot of ground as progressives, but we also lost a lot, and that was Prop 35. And it is legislation about sex trafficking, and it has its heart in the right place because trafficking is horrible. I'm really big on consent, and one thing I believe about sex work is that everyone involved should really want to be there for it. So I'm really opposed to trafficking. And I was really opposed to this piece of legislation because it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary in that it puts sex workers in a much more dangerous place. It means that our partners and our parents and our children are in a much more dangerous place. It means that the language around coercion has kind of dissipated. It means that basically all sex workers are seen as trafficked victims who need someone to come rescue them. And that rescue can mean having to give up your internet passwords, basically, to have you have no more internet privacy. It can mean having to register on the sex offender list for life. And it can mean that people who are charged with sex trafficking, which could be something as simple as giving us a ride to work, they could be subject to 15 to 20 in prison. And that happened last night, and it happened with a really huge, overwhelming number up in the 80s. And so for a lot of us, we love San Francisco, we've made this place our home. There's a wonderful sex-positive culture, but that sex-positive culture by itself may not be enough to protect us, because we're in the state of California. And so it means this legislation is out there for us. So, you're hearing all these great stories tonight, and if you can, give a whore a high five. Like, lift your glass to the call girls, the mistresses, the escorts, the strippers, the phone sex workers, just every type of sex worker out here. I care about you all. This audience cares about you. Body Storytelling cares about you so much. And let's spread some poor love, because we got to change this.
Yeah.
Dirty whore business. And, I didn't always know I was going to grow up to be a dirty whore. There were all kinds of things I could have been. When I was in the 6th grade, for instance, I totally was going to grow up to be the first person on Mars, not the first woman. I was very adamant about that. First person on Mars, not the first woman, not the first woman. But, science and technology just didn't really move on my timeline. So that was a disappointment. No more astronaut. That didn't work. Another thing that I really liked was cutting up dead people. I've actually been really interested in forensic pathology. I had parents who worked at the Los Angeles County General Hospital. They were psychiatric professionals. And when I was little and they didn't have a babysitter for me, they would sometimes just take me to work and throw me into one of the cells. Great place for a 3-year-old. It had, nice padded walls. I wasn't going to hurt myself, couldn't get away. I have lots of strange memories of childhood, kind of looking out that little square window and having people kind of look back down at me. wondering just the inevitable question, what did she do to get in here? Like a 4-year-old maximum lockdown. And my dad, actually, he worked on jail psych, and he had an office right across the hall from Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. And Richard Ramirez had been a big kind of figure of my childhood because he was active in the neighborhood where I grew up, where my mother had been by herself with me at night when my dad was at work. So I heard all kinds of Night Stalker stories at dinner, like what he was up to, who he threw poo on today, you know, like all that kind of crazy stuff. And that was just dinner conversation. And the other great thing about LA County General Hospital is that the Bureau of the Coroner has a gift shop, which is really cool. I really liked it, and I would hang out there, and I just made a lot of friends in forensic pathology, went on to college, and really got interested in studying abnormal psychology, just kind of tying in ideas that I learned at home, and also going to class and cutting up dead people. Just so much fun, and I really love like spreading them open and getting to see how we're all made out of meat, and you just kind of, you disassociate and you pull apart tendons and ligaments, and I really get it, I really get zoned in there. But I did not grow up to be a forensic pathologist. I grew up to be a whore. And I had a client who, he was pretty cool. He was a short guy, and he had all these really interesting fantasies. One fantasy that he had, that he wanted us to act out together, is that I would be a sorority girl, and he would be a fraternity boy, and I'd be a little bit drunk, and I'd be passed out, and he would come and he would take advantage of me. So that would be fun to get to role play, and I'd get to do my best drunken sorority girl. Just, oh my God. Who loves Zima? You know, just like be really date rapeable. As date rapeable as I can be, because that's what you do, you know? Because I'm a professional. Nothing but the best for my clients. So he had that fantasy, and then he had another fantasy. He said, you know, like, I want you to be a doll, a really pretty dolly. So I made a point to like wear a dolly dress and dolly makeup, and I was a doll, and I can't move, and Dolly can't talk. But he was kind of angry at Dolly. Things happened to Dolly, and one thing that he really wanted me to do was kind of like stand up and then like fall onto the bed. Like a doll that just couldn't stand up, and then he would have sex with me. There was the doll that fell over, and that was irresistible. Nothing like a falling doll to get you turned on. And so like, okay, all right, so I'm a dolly, and I'm such a method actor whore. That's just how I work. Stanislav, you know, big influence. And as he's watching, I'm looking at to describe this, and I'm thinking about things, and I'm thinking about his eye contact and his tone of voice and what I really think he's reaching at with his fantasy. And, you know, I just was kind of processing, and sometimes I'm kind of geeky, and I'm like a computer, and I say things before I realize what I've said. And I looked him dead in the eyes, and I just said, "You want me dead, don't you?" And he just nodded, but with deer in the headlights, because I don't think anyone had ever said that to him before. You want me dead, don't you? I don't know why. I mean, I hope someone loved him, but here I was, and once I'd said it, kind of had to commit to it. You know, that's a really interesting point. I've now essentially articulated something about his desire, and the way his eyes looked, I knew he really wanted it. And I also knew that I wasn't afraid of him. But that's kind of a fucked up fantasy. And we talked about it a little bit. And he had a fantasy about stalking, and then killing, and then having sex with my dead body. And he really wanted it to be in, like, a kind of skeezy motel. And he picked a place on MacArthur, very accessible to Bart. And it was kind of, this was not a good hotel, you guys. This was a bad motel. It was really cheap. It had a lot of broken furniture. Like, there were stains in the bathroom, and I didn't know if they were poo or blood. So I just closed the door, you know? And this was, I don't really like this phrase, but there's no other way to describe this motel, this roachy, you know, there was a homeless guy with a shopping cart right out the back window of this motel room. It was a dead hooker motel. And I'm a sex worker, and I'm showing up to do this necro fantasy, so it's already kind of hitting me right in the face. This is what we're walking into. And we get in there, and I look at the bed, and I look at the blanket, and this is just, oh. And I look at him, and he's so excited, and I don't want to be a hoe no more. I want to be a barista. I don't know about this, but I am a professional. So we get started, and I kind of sit down next to him, and I look at him, and I say, "You were thinking about this for a really long time, weren't you?" And he nods. "Yeah. You probably saw me one time in public, and you don't know what was so different or special about me, but I was kind of special when you saw me." And he nods. He does a lot of nodding. He's really not talking. He's kind of falling into his own little fantasy world. And so I'm taking charge. And you saw me and you picked me. He nods. I unzip his pants. I stick my hand in his pants. I get my hand on his dick. I pull it out of his boxers. So I'm stroking his cock. "You picked me, and I look special, and it's because I look like her, huh? I look just like her. And you watched me for a while, didn't you? Yeah, you used to drive by my house, huh? Yeah? Yeah, you drove by my house, and you'd look through the windows, look behind the curtains, huh? Yeah. You watched me a lot. You got to know my schedule, huh? You totally knew when I would get up, when I'd be in the kitchen making my coffee. Yeah. Probably did a couple things that she used to do too, huh? It was really special. And you're just kind of used to seeing me, but you knew today was different. Yeah, today was different. You knew today was the day you were going to finally meet me. You were going to finally meet me and say hello, and is that better? Okay. You knew today was the day you were really going to meet me. And you knew that I take BART to go to work. You know that I take the subway, so you kind of waited until I left the house and I was heading to the subway, and that's when you grabbed me, huh? You grabbed me and you pulled me around the corner. You grabbed me by my hair and you pulled me around the corner, and then you threatened me with a gun. Not a gun, not a gun, not a gun. No, you wouldn't have a gun. No, you're not a gun type. You had a knife. Yes, you had a knife. You had a knife. You had a big knife, and you scared me with that knife. You had that knife up against my throat, and you stared at me because I looked so much like her, and you were going to have me, and I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to be right here for you, baby. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be right here. Do you still like that? Good. And once you had that knife up against my throat, you couldn't help it, could you? I just looked so pretty. You wanted to have those eyes. You wanted to have all of that. And he nods, and I can start to feel him getting really close. And I'm saying these things, and I'm being a damn professional, and I'm also kind of scared. I'm also kind of vulnerable because, like, I totally take BART to work, to be a hoe. And I'm in this dead hooker motel, and he's totally having this big fantasy, and I'm describing this thing that makes me vulnerable, that makes him vulnerable, and I finally talk about when he kills me with his knife, and that's when he came. Oh, a beautiful, wonderful orgasm, and I felt really good, because one thing that you do not ever do is you never let someone with a serial killer fetish leave your dead hooker motel room with a hard-on. No, you start, you finish. This is beyond quality control for the client. This is about quality control for the world. I care. I give so many fucks. And I got him off, and he was really happy. And, I got to have that crazy moment where, if there was any whore in the world who was ready for that gig, right then and there, it was me. And I got to do everything I loved about sex work, which is essentially like staying on land and holding a line for somebody, for them to go and explore the interior of their own mind and their own desire. And I think that's an incredible opportunity. And I always feel honored when I get to be the person who holds the rope and helps bring somebody back, even when it's a little bit intimidating. But moreover, the fact that here he has this fantasy about stalking and killing and, it's a very naughty fantasy this man had. you know, maybe I should have been more scared than I was. But I think he was the one who was vulnerable, and he's the one who needed a damn professional. And I got to be one of the dirtiest kinds of whores and the dirtiest kinds of roachy hooker motels, and it was one of the greatest, most empowering experiences of my life. And I am another person who can say I'm so proud to be a dirty whore, and I absolutely love telling here at Body. Thank you so much.